Watch this.
The catastrophic failure at the border is a catastrophic failure of the federal government.
But can that failure be fixed at the state level? Well, we're about to find out after Idaho's first step, a strongly worded letter to that federal government.
Conservatives in Idaho, at least in the past, have always believed in local control.
Is that still the case? Based on several bills we've seen over the last several years, some are wondering if it is. So we asked a couple of Republicans about local control. Yes, the McCall Winter Carnival is a little later this year, and the timing, combined with the warmer weather, haven't been the best ingredients for their famous snow sculptures. But even if the snow isn't sticking, the artists are, with the help of some looser rules for the carvings.
Over the next decade, the decision we're going to have to make as a state and as a country is, do we want to import the workers or do we want to import our food?
Sure seems like a simplified ultimatum, but ag leaders in the state say it is a reality. Yesterday, we told you about a new report from the University of Idaho that showed our economy is dependent on undocumented workers. It's especially true for year-round agricultural jobs, like at the dairy, because our federal work visa programs only accept seasonal work. Idaho's congressional delegation has tried to fix that, but Congressman Mike Simpson told us last year, politics keep getting in the way.
And until you can control that border, you're going to have a tough time passing anything that has the word immigration attached to it. And that's unfortunate. That's the political environment that we're in.
Okay, so now the Idaho Senate says, well, they've seen enough. Lawmakers don't have to agree on a lot here. They don't have a lot on this topic to agree on, but there's a majority voice saying the feds, they need to step up. First, secure the border. Second, create a work visa for year-round labor. Here's Andrew Bartline.
There tends to be understanding ingrained in the binary. White collars and blue, or left versus right. Now add the political plea today.
Federal government
of Americans.
Please do something.
And the undocumented.
We need to secure our borders right now.
But that's just one piece of a nuanced problem.
A task they have failed miserably at.
Where the solution now can't be reduced to just ones and twos.
Prioritizes labor over security. That's what this memorial does.
As a state, Idaho has little to no control over the southern border, but plenty of concern.
That it's only gotten worse.
So the Idaho Senate today is only here to send a message to D.C.
We can, badmouth the administration and do all that we want to do, but Congress has got to act. The president's got to act.
Though there's a spectrum on exactly what that message is.
We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Sponsored by Senator Jim Guthrie.
Amnesty.
And Kelly Anthony.
This memorial says we do not support amnesty as the Idaho State Senate.
But it also says current undocumented workers are essential to the state's economy.
To work in jobs and industries that is undesirable to the domestic workforce.
Roughly 30,000 undocumented workers are in Idaho. And the memorial simultaneously calls for a year-round work visa program, which sounds antithetical to no amnesty.
And if there's going to be punishment or consequence, where do all these guest workers come from?
Senator Brian Lenny opposed the memorial for that reason.
Where are the guest workers coming from? If we're not going to let people in and we're going to take the people here and hold them responsible, to me that would be sending them back, deporting them.
That line doesn't mean anything to me because we're not going to put any teeth behind it. We're not holding anybody accountable now.
Practically, Idaho's in no position to deport 30,000 workers, mostly because of how the system's set up.
Because of our desperation for workers, we have encouraged lawlessness in those who come here illegally and those who hire them knowing they are illegal. And so there's been some things that have been stated that I really find offensive, is that Americans do not want to do these jobs. I have witnessed that they do want to do these jobs. I've actually hired some of them.
Our previous reporting shows Senator Zeiderfeld is quite the exception to the rule. Last year, Idaho had 6,000 dairy job openings, giving priority to Americans. Only 3 applied, and an anonymous farmer makes it even more clear.
I mean, in the 20 plus years that we have used the H-2A program, I have had one American applicant that has come to me for a job.
Fix illegal immigration at the border. Fix legal immigration on the farms.
But what this is saying is you're going to be accountable.
The Idaho Senate voted the feds can and should do both.
To say that we just shut the border off, how would that have looked if we'd have done that 10, 20, 50 years ago? And how many of us possibly in this room might have been affected by a policy that narrow?
So is it amnesty to allow people who broke the law to come and work in America to stay and keep working through what would be a year-round visa program if this letter actually accomplishes something in the long run? Well, I guess that depends on your definition of amnesty, but Senator Guthrie says the applicable laws that already exist will still exist, and current undocumented workers would not be exempt from them. So sure, Brian, you could throw the book at whoever you wanted as a prosecutor or somebody in charge of immigration, but there is discretion in our law. First offense crossing the border, if you're not trafficking drugs or any other accompanying crime, right, it's a misdemeanor, and it can be a fine of like $250. So maybe that's how you handle it. I don't know. There is discretion, though.
It would be interesting. I don't know exactly what Representative or Senator Zoiderfeld, does for a living to say she's hired them herself.
People we've talked to said they can't find anyone.
Twice as many people we've spoken to have said that's not a thing. So, all right, thank you very much, Andrew. All right, we got a little update on legislation we brought you earlier this session. Senate Bill 1234 is one step closer to the governor's desk. It'll provide reimbursement for prescription contraception to at least 6 months. And so this is what this does. It will make it so the Senate, I should say, contraception for women will be pushed out to 6 months, because right now it's only about 1 to 3 months that most insurance companies cover.
And all the mess and the problems of negotiating insurance and health care in our country, this is a chance to put just a little bit of common sense in the thing and push it along.
Senate bill passed the House Business Committee yesterday with a do-pass recommendation, and it is now waiting to be added to the agenda for a full floor debate. If the majority of the House votes it through, it will then be up to the governor to sign it into law. It's been a rallying cry you may have heard a few times over the past few years. Well, with the pandemic and school boards and libraries. But I assure you, the phrase local control has been around for a bit. In fact, it's one of the conservative principles. The level of government that governs best is the one that governs least. The only reason we would elevate above a city when it comes to governance, the only reason would be that you need to bring in additional resources. That'd be financial resources or some sort of expertise to help you that you couldn't get at a local level. But we've seen a flurry of bills these past few years that many would say calls into question that, conservative philosophy, that we need a state law to determine how an issue should be handled on the local level or to override what has already been handled on the local level. What books should be in the libraries, what pronouns to use for transgender students, whether masks should be worn to stop the spread of a disease at a school, or whether cities can decide what regulations they can impose for allowing affordable housing. Those are all bills being considered this year at the State House. Are they examples of a breach of conservative principles? Well, we decided to ask a couple of Republicans who have some thoughts on local control. One of them, the former chair of the Idaho Republican Party, Trent Clark.
Well, as a political philosophy, it has always been a philosophy associated with conservatives, the conservative right. It's based on the concept that you only elevate an item of governance if you absolutely have to. That cities and towns should be able to solve problems for themselves.
Exactly 8 years ago, Trent Clark wrote an op-ed about this very thing, calling the term local control something that carries drastically different meanings for different legislators.
Conservatives in Idaho, at least in the past, have always believed in local control. We believe that about education, we believe that about schools, and we certainly believe that about most forms of regulation.
But lately,
I hang my head in shame, and all of you should. And everyone in this room should as well.
Including this legislative session.
And having more guns in my school doesn't make me feel any safer.
We've seen a lean away from local control.
What you're missing there is the actual human dialogue that needs to go on. Dealing with those issues at the local level requires that one-on-one interface. Dealing with that issue in Boise allows you to get your way without having to talk to your neighbor. And when you try to solve a problem that way, you miss something.
Clark calls it venue shopping, when you're worried you won't get the solution you want at the local level.
It's all about the win. And if you can find a venue that lets you win, there are people who put the win actually as a greater good than actually solving the problem. And traditional conservatives would call that out as, well, if liberals did this, we would object to it.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So this gets to be a real challenge because we love our local control, and then we're finding ourselves coming in and poking around on local control. And the libraries are a fine example.
What we have seen, again, is just illustrated, are the attempts of a few people to label certain books as pornographic.
There's this session's library bill.
They only have to react when someone complains.
As well as Representative Ted Hill's idea.
I'm not going to be a sheep at my school, and so I'm going to do something about it.
To allow teachers to conceal carry in schools.
The local control and our local school board had the right information to make a decision for Middleton.
Representative Hill points to Idaho law already allowing school districts to regulate guns as they see fit. But some, in his opinion,
all I want to do is secure the schools, and that's just it.
Haven't done enough. What is your stance on local control philosophy?
Well, that's the great thing. That's the best way to go. And in this case, local control with school boards is a confusion because school boards act autonomously in many ways.
When it comes to school boards, they're elected positions, correct?
Correct.
So whatever the decisions they make for those people in the district, well, they'll be held accountable at the ballot box.
Sure.
So you say they're autonomous, they're kind of not.
Well, they have a tendency to act autonomously because they follow policy. Legislators write the law.
It sounds like you're kind of making an argument against local control because you're taking it away from that one-on-one interaction between a principal, a school board, a family, a community.
Well, that's absolutely. And I think this is great because they know their district the best. But there has to be overarching guidance. It's like a military. Do you want to have every single platoon across the country do as they please? No, you got to have some sort of generalized, centralized, I would say at this point, some strategic level. And in this case, Idaho is a strategic level.
Is this hypocritical of the majority party right now that are kind of pushing these ideas?
There are members of the legislature who I do think know that they're being hypocritical, but they're making a choice between, do I want to be accused of being hypocritical or do I want to be accused of not acting on an issue my constituents want me to act on?
Did you happen to catch Representative Hill, what he said about comparing local control to platoons in the military? He said, do we want every single platoon across the country doing as they please? He says, no, there has to be some centralized control. So my question would have been, how would that argument fly when it comes to states' rights? Trent Clark believes the abandonment of this philosophy is a national trend and people's impatience with the political process. Board meetings are, once a month they do these things? They take time. Trent also reminded us of an old saying in politics: a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still, meaning using the legislature to force a local school board, for example, to do something doesn't mean you've changed their mind on that issue. And he agrees with the idea of, say, librarians knowing their local community. If you take those decisions away from that librarian, you'll end up with some really bad decisions being made. Coming up on Saturday, March 2nd, Republicans around the state are going to gather at different locations, 210 of them, to choose the presidential candidate. That's coming up in the GOP Presidential Caucus. And according to the Idaho Republican Caucus website, you can participate in that caucus if you've been a registered Republican since January 1st of this year, 2024, or if you turn 18 between January 1st and the date of the presidential caucus and you register as a Republican. So if you meet these criteria, well, then you probably received a Republican caucus card in the mail that has your caucus location on it. But apparently, some of those were not correct. Alice Jenkins texted us saying she got a card in the mail and said her caucus location, Maple Grove Elementary. Republican caucus website, though, says it's Bora High School. Could you please ask if you're getting conflicting information? Which is correct with this? Alice wants to know. We reached out to the Republican Party, and they told us, yep, they were made aware over the weekend a small number of postcards were identified with the wrong caucus address. They've been addressed, again, literally and figuratively, and new postcards are already dispatched to those voters. They said if you can find your caucus as well, on their location, I should say, at IdahoRepublicanCaucus.com, which is where Alice also went. We also noticed the card says this part on it. Keep this card and bring it with you to the caucus. So that got us thinking, do you need that card to vote? The answer is no. GOP told us voters are not required to bring that postcard with them, but they do suggest you do bring it so you kind of know where you're going, have the precinct at your fingertips. All you do need to vote in the caucus is a photo ID. Again, that caucus coming up less than 2 weeks, Saturday, March 2nd. All right, we're also about 2.5 weeks away from everyone's favorite springtime reminder. Spring forward. March 10th, a vast majority of the United States and all of Idaho goes into daylight saving time. What is now, 5:15 will be 6:15 on March 10th. And for those who set their alarms on Sundays, well, they're going to lose an hour of sleep, but our sunsets are going to be later. Every year, it seems we get the same question posed. Why can't we just eliminate this daylight saving time thing altogether? True to form, Bud in Boise sent in this text message yesterday. I saw something about our legislators passing an approval to eliminate daylight saving time. Was I mistaken, or is this gonna happen? Well, you were not mistaken, Bud. Last week, Republican Representative Joe Alfieri introduced House Bill 584, which would eliminate the snip, snap of daylight saving time and keep Idaho on the standard time permanently. The bill's currently in the House State Affairs Committee and awaiting a hearing, I guess. Is it going to happen? Well, the other question, can Idaho just do that? Yes, we can. The Federal Uniform Time Act of 1966 allows states to opt out of daylight saving time, but not the other way around. However, there has been a push to make the entire country observe daylight saving time all the time. There was a bill passed in the U.S. Senate in 2022. That stalled in the House. Another attempt made last year, the Sunshine Protection Act of 2023. Nothing has happened with that yet, and it would require the House to agree to it. The president would have to sign it in order for it to take effect. By the way, California, they passed Prop 7 in 2018 to opt out of DST. So why not, Idaho? Why don't we just follow California's lead? We love doing that, right?
Well, to begin with, you can see McCall had the high temperature so far of 37 degrees. Just a little bit of concern with that. But of course, at night, those temperatures are getting very cold. As you can see, Boise, 59 for today. Almost, I have to tell you, almost 60 degrees, 57 for Nampa. Same thing for Caldwell. So these temperatures really going up. And it was 55 degrees for Twin Falls. That gives you a little preview of what the weekend is going to be like. But also something to add to this with the warmer temperatures in the valley. Sunset for tonight is 6:20 on March the 1st. So we're only talking about a week and a half away. 6:34 is the sunset. And then the first 10 days, when you look at the month of March, the sunset on the 10th, which is the time change that we were just talking about, is at 7:45. So it makes it for a much later sunset, as you can see. And by that time, we're starting to get some of our evenings back and getting pretty close to 8 o'clock in the evening as you look at that. So with that in mind, here's what we have in the 7-day forecast. You can see for tomorrow, we still have these isolated showers around. I know every now and then some of you probably said, I heard a thunderstorm in the distance or you saw a little lightning. Didn't happen much, but that's the possibility probably through Wednesday. Not much for Thursday. It's pretty much decreasing. It'll be kind of breezy, but not real windy. And then you notice these temperatures coming up. Take a look at Sunday. That could be a 60. I've seen 61. Could even be some low 60s then, but then a rude awakening with temperatures dropping into Monday and Tuesday. More storms, colder temperatures, and a chance of rain and snow.
Right here at the McCall Winter Carnival.
People had tons and tons of fun, especially since this was the first carnival back since COVID.
And of course, snow sculptures.
Yeah, they take a lot longer than I thought.
I mean, you see the creativity all around town. There's just some cool stuff.
It was the most magical thing in the world to come up here and see what people do with their artwork in the middle of the winter.
Well, they're going to try to do that this year, but the date, which says we're still in winter, temperatures are telling a different story. Like you just heard Rick say, temperatures McCall slated for in the 40s this weekend. We'll freeze overnight, but still going to be warm during the day. McCall Winter Carnival and the famous snow sculptures, well, they need those temperatures to be below freezing for most of the day. At least the lack of snow, though, isn't as bad as, well, when it was back in 1977 when KTVB's Susan Eby was blamed for that lack of snow. This year, though, while there is some snow in the mountains, the warmer temperatures in town just won't let it stick around. So the event organizers, they loosen the reins a bit on what's allowed to create a sculpture. Artists can now use other materials to help keep them standing, like chicken wire or even some wood. But every sculptor we spoke with, well, they're staying a snow purist.
It's traditional, no chicken wire, no nothing, just there you go. It's a snow sculpture. If it's going to be a snow sculpture, make it a snow sculpture.
There you go. Well, instead of those fantastical forms like those big monstrosities they sometimes build, they say they're going to probably stick with some more sturdy structures so they might last a little longer, and some of them are starting as late as possible. Only a few up there now, but 17 sculptures are slated to be created for this weekend, 5 fewer from last year. McCall Winter Carnival is set for this Friday through Sunday. You can check out our full event guide at ktvb.com. All right, welcome back. Let's get to the comments for today's show, like this one from Scott on the immigration letter that we sent to the federal government. We have to wise up. Congress has to overhaul the immigration policy of this country. Sure, there are some, I guess, executive orders that can be taking place, but Scott says this: you can't just give up and dump it in the president's lap and gripe about what he does about it. Sit down and do your jobs. You wanted the job, now do it. Moving on here, local control debate. Isn't the state legislator doing exactly what they complain about when the federal government institutes something they disagree with? Wouldn't that be called government overreach? Kind of the point I made at the end of that story. Having police officers in our schools is a win-win. These folks are supposed to be involved with our community, children included, and being in the school environment gives the police officers insight, behavior, red flags about troubled kids, all that kind of stuff, and help them be better addressed, as Patrick and Meridian. Problem is, there are a lot of districts out there that can't afford to pay a resource officer to be in the school, nor are there any available. Sometimes it's just too small of an area. How can the Republican Party reconcile their professed commitment to reducing government oversight with their apparent desire for micromanaging every aspect of our lives? This is a question Dawn has asked, and so have you or others. I love our late sunsets during the summer. Would hate to lose that with the elimination of daylight saving time, vote to keep it year round. But do you like those suns coming up, the sun coming up later in the morning? How about this one? What would happen in North Idaho? Well, Washington's working on one bill as well. It could be the same.